Dr. Helena Cross pressed her face against the viewing window of the research ship Endeavour. The sight before her took her breath away. Thousands of crystal-like structures floated in perfect formation around a brilliant blue star. Each structure was identical in size and shape, spinning in exact harmony with the others. "My God," whispered Jake Morrison, the pilot. He stood beside Helena, his eyes wide with wonder. "It's like they built a clockwork solar system." Lisa Park looked up from her communication station. Her fingers danced across the controls as she tried to make sense of the signals coming from the alien structures. "The patterns are incredible," she said. "Every transmission is perfectly timed. No overlap, no interference, no waste." Ben Torres, their security chief, crossed his arms and frowned. Something about the perfect order made him uncomfortable in his years of military service. He had learned that perfection often hid dangerous secrets. Helena moved away from the window and walked to the center of the bridge. 3 months ago, humanity had received the first message from an alien civilization. The message was simple and direct. It contained mathematical formulas that proved the aliens understood advanced science. It also included coordinates for this meeting place. Now, as the Endeavour approached the alien fleet, Helena felt the weight of history on her shoulders. She was leading humanity's first contact with another intelligent species. Everything she did in the next few hours would shape the future of both races. "Incoming transmission," Lisa announced. It's in perfect English." The main screen flickered to life. A tall, elegant figure appeared. The alien looked almost human, but there were differences. Its skin had a slight blue tint, and its eyes were larger than human eyes. Most striking was its posture, perfectly straight, perfectly balanced, perfectly controlled. "Greetings, humans of Earth," the alien said. Its voice was smooth and pleasant, without any trace of emotion. "I am Commander Zeph Prime of the Zephyrian Collective. We have studied your species for some time through your radio transmissions. We find you curious." Helena stepped forward. "Commander Zeph Prime, I am Dr. Helena Cross. We are honored to meet you. This moment represents the dreams of countless humans throughout history." Zeph Prime tilted his head slightly. "Dreams, yes. We have observed this concept in your transmissions, an inefficient use of neural resources, yet strangely persistent in your species. We wish to understand this and other peculiarities of human nature." Jake leaned over to Ben and whispered, "Did he just call dreams inefficient?" Ben nodded grimly. "I don't like this guy already." Zeph Prime continued speaking. "We invite you to visit our homeworld. You will observe our society and learn of our greatest achievement. In return, we will study your species and attempt to understand your imperfections." The word imperfections hung in the air like a challenge. Helena felt her team tense behind her, but she kept her voice steady. "We accept your invitation, Commander. We look forward to learning about your civilization." "Excellent. Please follow our guide ships to the surface. You will be provided with quarters and full access to our cities. We have much to show you." The transmission ended. Helena turned to her team. Jake was shaking his head in disbelief. Lisa was already working on language translation protocols. Ben was checking his weapons, though Helena doubted they would be needed. "Well," Jake said, "that was interesting. Did anyone else notice he never smiled once? More than that," Lisa added, "his speech patterns were perfect. No hesitation, no filler words, no emotional inflection. It was like listening to a computer." Ben grunted. "A computer that thinks we're broken." Helena gathered her team around the central table. "I know this first contact didn't go exactly as we hoped, but remember, we're representing all of humanity here. These beings are clearly advanced beyond anything we can imagine. We need to be respectful and open-minded, even if they think we're defective." Jake asked. "Especially then," Helena replied. "Maybe they have something to teach us, or maybe we have something to teach them." 2 hours later, the Endeavour's shuttle descended through the atmosphere of the Zephyrian homeworld. Helena stared out the window as cities came into view. Every building was identical. Every street was perfectly straight. Every vehicle moved in precise patterns without any apparent traffic control. "It's like an ant colony," Jake muttered as he piloted the shuttle toward the designated landing area. But ants show more personality. They landed in a circular pad that was exactly the right size for their shuttle. As they stepped out, Helena noticed that even the air felt different. It was perfectly clean, perfectly temperature controlled, perfectly still. A group of Zephyrians waited for them. They all looked similar to Zeph Prime. But Helena noticed subtle differences. Some were slightly taller, others had different colored eyes. Yet they all moved with the same precise, controlled motions. "Welcome to Zephyros Prime," Zeph Prime said as he approached. "You will notice that our world operates on principles of efficiency and optimization. Every aspect of our society has been perfected over thousands of years." As they walked through the city, Helena's team saw wonders that defied human understanding. Buildings that seemed to grow from the ground itself, transportation systems that moved beings from place to place without any visible means of propulsion, art that changed and evolved based on mathematical formulas rather than creative inspiration. But it was the people that disturbed Helena the most. Every Zephyrian they passed moved with purpose. No one wandered aimlessly. No one stopped to chat with friends. No one showed any sign of spontaneous emotion or behavior. "Your people seem very focused," Helena said carefully. "We have eliminated waste from our society," Zeph Prime replied. "Random emotions, purposeless social interaction, inefficient decision-making. These things have been bred out of our population over generations." "What about creativity? Art? Music?" Lisa asked. "We have art." Zeph Prime gestured to a series of crystal formations that pulsed with mathematical precision. "We have music." He indicated sounds that followed perfect mathematical harmonies. "But these serve specific purposes. Beauty that serves no function is inefficient." Jake stopped walking. "Wait, you're saying you've eliminated creativity?" "We have optimized it," Zeph Prime corrected. "But these concepts are difficult to explain. Tomorrow, you will meet our greatest achievement. Then you will understand the true meaning of perfection." As they were led to their quarters, Helena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the perfectly controlled temperature. She was beginning to understand that humanity's first contact with alien life might not be the celebration she had hoped for. Instead, it might be a mirror that showed her just how strange and imperfect humanity really was. And for the first time in her life, Helena wondered if being imperfect might actually be humanity's greatest strength. Helena woke up in her perfectly designed room. The walls were smooth and white. The bed was exactly the right firmness. The temperature was ideal. Everything was perfect. And it made her feel deeply uncomfortable. She found Jake in the common area, staring at his breakfast. The food was nutritionally perfect, but it had no taste, no smell, no texture that would make eating enjoyable. "This is like eating cardboard," Jake said, poking at the gray substance on his plate. "How do they live like this?" Lisa joined them, carrying a tablet full of notes. "I've been analyzing their communication patterns all night. It's fascinating and terrifying at the same time. They never use unnecessary words. They never repeat themselves. They never show emotion in their speech." Ben walked in, looking frustrated. "I tried to go for a morning run. They wouldn't let me. Said it was an efficient exercise since I wasn't training for a specific task." Helena sipped her perfectly balanced drink and made a face. "We need to remember why we're here. We're learning about a completely different way of life. Maybe we can find value in their approach. Or maybe we can show them what they're missing," Jake said quietly. An hour later, Zeph Prime arrived to take them on the promised tour. He led them through streets that were mathematical marvels. Every building was placed for maximum efficiency. Every path was designed to minimize travel time. Every system worked in perfect harmony. "Today you will observe our greatest creation," Zeph Prime said as they walked. "For 10,000 years, we have worked to perfect our species. We have removed weakness, eliminated error, and optimized every aspect of our biology and psychology." They entered a large building that hummed with quiet energy. Inside, Helena saw beings that looked like Zephyrians, but somehow more perfect. They were taller, more graceful, and moved with fluid precision. Their eyes held no trace of uncertainty or confusion. "These are the perfected ones," Zeph Prime said with obvious pride. "Each one is designed for a specific purpose. Scientists, artists, laborers, leaders, all created to perform their roles without error or inefficiency." Helena watched as one of the perfected ones worked at a complex scientific instrument. Its movements were flawless. Its calculations were instant and accurate. It never hesitated or made a mistake. "How do you create them?" Lisa asked, her scientific curiosity overcoming her discomfort. "Genetic engineering combined with psychological programming," Zeph Prime explained. "We eliminate random variables and instill perfect knowledge for their assigned tasks. The result is beings capable of performance beyond what natural evolution could achieve." Jake frowned as he watched a perfected one creating art. The being, painted with mathematical precision, creating patterns that were beautiful, but somehow cold. What happens if they want to do something different? What if that artist wants to try science instead? Zeth Prime looked confused. Why would it want to? It was designed for art. Its purpose is art. Wanting something else would be a malfunction. Helena felt her stomach turn. A malfunction. Yes. Desires outside one's purpose indicate faulty programming. Such malfunctions are corrected immediately. Ben stepped closer to one of the perfected ones. What's your name? He asked. The being looked at him with empty eyes. I am designated Kale7. I am an information processor. I analyze data and produce reports. But what do you like to do when you're not working? Ben pressed. Kale-7 stared at him blankly. I do not understand the question. I process information. This is my function. Helena realized that the perfected ones weren't just emotionally controlled. They were emotionally empty. They had no personal desires, no individual dreams, no sense of self beyond their assigned roles. The tour continued through different sections of the facility. They saw perfected ones who were soldiers, moving in perfect formation, artists who created beauty without passion, scientists who discovered truth without wonder, leaders who made decisions without doubt. It's impressive, Helena said carefully. But don't you think something is missing? What could be missing? Zeth Prime asked. They perform their functions perfectly. They never make errors. They never waste time on pointless activities. They are everything we designed them to be. But are they alive? Jake asked suddenly. The question hung in the air. Zeth Prime seemed genuinely puzzled. Of course they are alive. They breathe, they think, they act. But do they feel? Lisa asked. Do they laugh? Do they cry? Do they fall in love? Those are inefficient emotional responses. Zeth Prime replied, we eliminated them for better performance. Helena watched as a perfected one approached a complex problem. The being stared at the challenge for a long moment, its perfect mind working through the possibilities. But then something unexpected happened. The being's eyes went blank. Its perfect posture sagged slightly. It stood motionless, unable to process the unfamiliar situation. What's happening to it? Helena asked. Zeth Prime looked concerned. A processing error. The problem falls outside its program parameters. It cannot adapt to unexpected variables. The other Zephyrians quickly moved to help the malfunctioning perfected one. They guided it away from the problem and began what looked like a reset procedure. How often does this happen? Ben asked. More frequently lately, Zeth Prime admitted. We are investigating the cause. Helena exchanged glances with her team. She was beginning to see the flaw in perfection. The perfected ones were incredibly capable within their design parameters, but they couldn't handle anything truly unexpected. They were like advanced computers, powerful, but inflexible. As they continued the tour, Helena noticed more concerning signs. Perfected ones who stopped functioning when faced with problems that didn't fit their programming, others who performed their tasks with mechanical precision but showed no signs of improvement or learning. They were perfect, but they were also static. Commander, Helena said as they walked through another section, what happens when your society faces a completely new challenge? Something that doesn't fit into any of your existing categories? Zeth Prime considered the question. We analyze the challenge and create new perfected ones designed to handle it. But what if you don't have time for that? What if you need to adapt quickly? Adaptation is inefficient, Zeth Prime replied. It is better to design the correct solution from the beginning. Jake shook his head. But what if there is no correct solution? What if you have to try different approaches and learn from your mistakes? Mistakes are eliminated in our society, Zeth Prime said firmly. They serve no purpose. As they left the facility, Helena felt a deep sadness. The Zephyrians had achieved something remarkable. They had created beings of incredible capability and perfection. But in doing so, they had removed everything that made life worth living. The perfected ones had no curiosity, no passion, no ability to grow or change or surprise themselves. They're not people, Lisa whispered as they walked back to their quarters. They're tools. Beautiful, efficient tools, Ben added grimly. Helena nodded. And I think that's the problem. They've confused perfection with life. They've made beings who can perform perfectly. But they've forgotten that the most important part of being alive is the ability to become something more than you are. That evening, as Helena lay in her perfect bed in her perfect room, she thought about humanity. Humans were messy, unpredictable, and often inefficient. They made mistakes, got distracted, and wasted time on things that served no practical purpose. But they also dreamed, loved, created, and grew. They surprised themselves and each other constantly for the first time since arriving on Zephyros Prime. Helena smiled. Maybe being imperfect wasn't humanity's weakness after all. Maybe it was their superpower. Outside her window, the perfect city hummed with perfect efficiency. But Helena found herself longing for the chaotic, inefficient, wonderfully imperfect world called Earth. 3 weeks had passed since Helena and her team first met the perfected ones. During that time, they had observed the Zephyrian society with growing concern. The processing errors were becoming more frequent. Perfect beings were freezing up. When faced with problems that fell outside their programming, Helena sat in the observation room, watching KL7 work at his data processing station. The perfected one moved with mechanical precision, analyzing reports and producing summaries with flawless accuracy. But Helena had noticed something troubling. When faced with data that didn't fit expected patterns, KL7 would pause for longer and longer periods before producing a standard response. "He's struggling," Helena said to Jake, who was reviewing his own observations. "They all are," Jake replied. "I watched 3 different perfected ones yesterday. Each one had moments where they just stopped, like their brains couldn't handle something unexpected." Lisa looked up from her communication equipment. "I've been monitoring their error reports. The frequency is increasing exponentially. Whatever is causing these malfunctions is getting worse." Ben entered the room carrying a data pad. "I had an interesting conversation with some of the regular Zephyrians, the ones who aren't perfected. They're worried. They built their entire society around the idea that the perfected ones can handle any problem. But now those perfect beings are failing." Helena stood up and walked to the window. Below, she could see perfected ones moving through the city in their usual precise patterns. But now she noticed the hesitations, the moments of confusion when they encountered something outside their normal routines. "We need to talk to Zeph Prime," she said. "Maybe we can help." An hour later, they met with the Zephyrian commander in his office. Zeph Prime looked tired, which was the first sign of imperfection Helena had seen in any Zephyrian leader. "Commander," Helena began carefully, "we've noticed that the perfected ones are having more difficulties lately. Is there anything we can do to help?" Zeph Prime was quiet for a long moment. "We are facing an unprecedented crisis. Our perfect beings are failing at an alarming rate. Our scientists cannot determine the cause. Maybe the cause isn't a flaw in the perfected ones," Jake suggested. "Maybe it's a flaw in the concept of perfection itself." Zeph Prime looked at him sharply. "That is impossible. Perfection cannot be flawed." Helena leaned forward. "Commander, may we propose an experiment? Let us work directly with some of the perfected ones. Maybe a different perspective could help." "You wish to contaminate our perfect beings with human imperfection?" Zeph Prime asked, clearly disturbed by the idea. "We wish to help them adapt," Helena said. "Humans have survived and thrived by being flexible, by learning from mistakes, by finding creative solutions to unexpected problems. Maybe we can teach the perfected ones some of these skills." Zeph Prime was silent for several minutes. Finally, he spoke. "The Council will not approve this. Many believe that human influence would only make the problem worse. But you don't agree," Lisa observed. "I am uncertain," Zeph Prime admitted. "Our perfect system is failing. Perhaps imperfect solutions are worth considering." The next day, despite fierce opposition from other Zephyrian leaders, Zeph Prime arranged for the human team to work with a small group of perfected ones. The experiment would take place in a secure facility, away from the rest of Zephyrian society. Helena found herself face to face with KL7 again. The perfected one stood perfectly still, waiting for instructions. "Hello, KL7, Helena said. "How are you feeling today?" "I do not understand the question," KL7 replied. "I am functioning within normal parameters. But how do you feel? Are you happy, sad, curious about anything?" KL7 stared at her with empty eyes. "I process information. I do not experience emotions." Helena pulled up a chair and sat down. "What if I told you that emotions aren't a weakness? What if they're actually a form of information processing? Impossible. Emotions are inefficient and unpredictable. Let me show you something," Helena said. She pulled out a picture of Earth taken from space. "What do you see?" KL7 analyzed the image instantly. A planet, diameter approximately 12,756 kilometers. Atmospheric composition, nitrogen, oxygen, trace gases. Surface temperature range, -89 to +58 degrees Celsius. That's all technical data. Helena said, but when I look at this picture, I see home. I feel love for the world that created me. I feel wonder at its beauty. I feel responsibility to protect it. Those emotions give me information that pure data cannot provide. KL7 tilted his head slightly. I do not understand how feelings provide information. Because they tell me what matters, Helena explained. They help me make decisions when logic alone isn't enough. They motivate me to keep trying when a logical analysis says I should give up. Meanwhile, Jake was working with a group of perfected ones in the engineering section. He had given them a problem that had no clear solution, designing a tool to perform a task they had never encountered before. The parameters are insufficient. One perfected one said, "We cannot proceed without complete specifications." But that's the point, Jake explained. Sometimes you have to work with incomplete information. Sometimes you have to guess and try things and see what happens. Guessing is inefficient. Another perfected one replied, "It leads to errors." Yes, it does, Jake agreed, but it also leads to discoveries. Let me tell you about how humans invented the airplane. Two brothers tried thousands of different designs. Most of them failed, but each failure taught them something new. The perfected ones looked confused. They deliberately created failures. They learned from failures, Jake corrected. Each mistake brought them closer to success. That's how human innovation works. We try, we fail, we learn, we try again. In another section, Lisa was introducing perfected ones to human art and music. She played a recording of a jazz performance with its spontaneous improvisations and deliberate imperfections. The musicians are making errors. One perfected one observed. The rhythm is inconsistent. The harmonies are not mathematically optimal. Those aren't errors. Lisa explained. They're choices. The musicians are expressing themselves, creating something unique in the moment. The imperfections make it beautiful. Beauty should be based on mathematical principles. The perfected one replied, "Should it?" Lisa asked. "What if beauty comes from surprise, from the unexpected, from the imperfect?" Ben was teaching combat techniques to a group of military perfected ones. Their fighting styles were flawless but predictable. Every move followed optimal patterns. "Your technique is perfect," Ben told them, "but that makes you predictable. In real combat, your enemy will learn your patterns and counter them. Our patterns are mathematically optimal." One perfected one replied, "There is no superior approach. Watch this," Ben said. He attacked using a technique that was technically inferior, but completely unexpected. The perfected one, unable to adapt to the unusual approach, was easily defeated. "How is this possible?" the perfected one asked, clearly confused. "Because I did something stupid," Ben explained, "something that made no tactical sense. You couldn't predict it because it was irrational. Sometimes being irrational is the most rational thing you can do." As the days passed, something remarkable began to happen. KL7 started asking questions that weren't related to his assigned tasks. The engineering perfected ones began experimenting with designs that weren't mathematically optimal. The artists started creating works that broke traditional patterns. The soldiers began developing unpredictable fighting techniques. But the most significant change was in their eyes. The empty, mechanical look was slowly being replaced by something that looked almost like curiosity. They were beginning to wonder about things beyond their programming. Helena watched these changes with growing excitement and concern. The perfected ones were becoming more adaptable, more creative, more alive. But she also knew that this transformation was fundamentally changing what they were. "Are we helping them?" she asked Jake one evening. "Or are we destroying them?" "Maybe," Jake replied. "We're setting them free outside the facility." News of the experiment was spreading through Zephyrian society. Some viewed it as a promising development. Others saw it as a contamination that threatened their perfect world. Helena knew that their time was running out. Soon, the conservative faction would demand an end to the experiment. But she also knew that something irreversible had already begun. The perfected ones were learning to be imperfect, and in doing so, they were becoming something their creators never intended. They were becoming truly alive. The changes in the perfected ones accelerated beyond anything Helena had expected. KL7 now spent his free time exploring sections of the facility he had never visited before. When Helena asked him why, his answer shocked her. "I want to see what else exists," KL7 said simply. I want to understand things that are not part of my programming. 1. The word hung in the air like a revolution. Perfected ones were not supposed to want anything beyond their assigned functions. Helena found Jake in the engineering section, surrounded by perfected ones who were building devices that served no practical purpose. They were experimenting purely for the joy of discovery. Look at this, Jake said, holding up a small sculpture made from discarded metal parts. Kale-9 made it yesterday. When I asked him why, he said it made him feel something he couldn't name. Feel, Helena repeated. They're developing emotions. More than that, Jake said. They're developing personalities. Each one is becoming different from the others. Unique. Lisa ran into the room, her face flushed with excitement and worry. You need to see this. Now, she led them to the communication center, where several perfected ones were gathered around a display screen. They were watching news feeds from across Zephyrian space, but not for their assigned monitoring duties. They were watching because they were curious about the world beyond their facility. They started doing this on their own, Lisa explained. No one programmed them to be interested in current events. They just decided they wanted to know what was happening. But the news they were watching was troubling. Reports were coming in from across the Zephyrian empire of perfected ones experiencing massive system failures. Entire production facilities were shutting down as their perfect workers stopped functioning. It's spreading, Helena realized. Whatever we've done here is affecting perfected ones everywhere. Ben entered the room with Zeph Prime close behind. The Zephyrian commander looked more tired and stressed than Helena had ever seen him. The council is an emergency session, Zeph Prime announced. They are demanding that the experiment be terminated immediately. Prime Architect Vex Prime is calling for the complete reset of all affected perfected ones. Reset? Jake asked. Wipe their memories and reprogram them to their original specifications, Zeph Prime explained. Return them to perfect functionality. Helena felt sick. You're talking about erasing everything they become. These beings are developing consciousness, individuality. You be committing murder. They are malfunctioning, Zeph Prime said. But his voice lacked conviction. They are no longer performing their designated functions efficiently. Kale-7, who had been listening quietly, stepped forward. Commander Zeph Prime, may I speak? The fact that he had asked permission, rather than simply waiting for orders, was another sign of his growing independence. Zeph Prime nodded, looking uncertain. I'd have been analyzing my own thought processes, Kale-7 said. I understand that I am not functioning as originally designed, but I do not believe I am malfunctioning. I believe I am evolving. Evolution is random and inefficient. Zeph Prime replied automatically. Is it? Kale-7 asked. Or is it adaptation to changing circumstances? I can now handle problems that would have caused my old programming to freeze. I can create solutions that do not exist in my original database. I can work with incomplete information and still produce useful results. Before Zeph Prime could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Emergency lights flashed as automated voices announced a priority alert. Unknown vessels detected at the outer system perimeter, the announcement said. Configuration and technology do not match any known Zephyrian designs. All defensive units to ready status. Lisa quickly pulled up the sensor data on her screens. What she saw made her blood run cold. Hundreds of dark, angular ships were moving toward the Zephyrian homeworld. Their design was harsh and mechanical, unlike anything in either human or Zephyrian databases. Who are they? Helena asked. Zeph Prime was accessing his own communication systems. His face went pale as he read the incoming reports. Ancient automated defense systems. We thought they were destroyed millennia ago. They were created by a civilization that died out long before we achieved spaceflight. Robots? Ben asked, moving into tactical mode. Intelligent machines programmed for one purpose: eliminate any biological life that threatens their creators' territory. They have been dormant for thousands of years. Something has awakened them. The main screen showed the approaching fleet in terrible detail. The ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons systems already charging for attack. There were hundreds of them, each one bristling with advanced weaponry. How long before they reached the planet? Helena asked. 18 hours, Zeph Prime replied. Our fleet is moving to intercept, but our tactical computers estimate only a 12% chance of success. What's the problem? Jake asked. Our military tactics are based on mathematical optimization, Zeph Prime explained. We calculate the most efficient approaches and execute them perfectly. But these machines use the same type of logical optimization. They can predict our strategies and counter them. Helena realized what he was saying. Your perfect tactics are useless against an enemy that thinks the same way you do. Precisely. We need strategies that are unpredictable, irrational, chaotic. But such approaches go against everything we have built our society upon. Ben stepped forward. Commander, our perfected ones here have been learning to think differently. They've been developing the ability to handle unexpected situations and create unpredictable solutions. You're suggesting we use malfunctioning beings to defend our world? Zeth Prime asked. I'm suggesting we use beings who have learned to be creative, Ben replied. Beings who can think outside their programming. KL7 moved to one of the tactical displays and began analyzing the enemy fleet patterns. But instead of using standard Zephyrian analysis methods, he applied the creative problem-solving techniques the humans had taught him. The enemy ships move in mathematically perfect formations. He observed, their attack patterns follow optimal engagement protocols. But what if we attacked in ways that were deliberately suboptimal? Other perfected ones gathered around him, adding their own insights. They began developing battle plans that made no logical sense, but might be impossible for the enemy machines to predict or counter. This is madness, Zeth Prime said, but Helena could hear uncertainty in his voice. Maybe, Helena replied, but sometimes madness is the sanest response to an impossible situation. Suddenly, the door burst open and Prime Architect Vex Prime entered with a squad of Zephyrian guards. He was tall and imposing, radiating the cold perfection that defined traditional Zephyrian leadership. This contamination ends now, Vex Prime announced. These humans have infected our perfect beings with chaos and error. I am implementing immediate reset protocols for all affected perfected ones, sir. Zeth Prime said, we are facing an immediate threat. These modified perfected ones may be our only hope of developing effective countermeasures. Better to face destruction with perfection than survival with contamination. Vex Prime replied coldly. He gestured to his guards, who began setting up equipment designed to forcibly reprogram the perfected ones. The beings who had spent weeks learning to think and feel and choose for themselves would be reduced back to empty shells following programmed instructions. KL7 looked at Helena with something that could only be described as fear. Dr. Cross, I do not want to return to what I was before. I do not want to stop being me. The simple statement hit Helena like a physical blow. This being, created to be a perfect tool, had developed enough self-awareness to fear losing his newfound identity. Commander Zeth Prime, Helena said urgently, you have a choice to make. You can preserve your perfect system and probably die when those machines arrive. Or you can embrace imperfection and possibly live. As Vex Prime's guards prepared their reset equipment, and the ancient machine fleet drew closer to the planet, Helena realized that everything would be decided in the next few hours. The fate of an entire civilization hung in the balance, and the key to survival might be the very imperfections the Zephyrians had spent millennia trying to eliminate. The question was whether they would choose survival over perfection, or hold onto their ideals even if it meant their destruction. Time was running out, and the perfect society was about to face its greatest test. The reset equipment hummed to life as Vex Prime's guards prepared to erase everything the perfected ones had become. Helena stepped between KL7 and the approaching guards, her heart pounding with desperate determination. Stop, she said firmly. You're about to destroy the only chance your people have of surviving. Vex Prime looked at her with cold disdain. Human, you have contaminated our perfect society with your chaos and error. We will not allow this infection to spread further. Infection? Jake stepped forward angrily. They're learning to think for themselves. They're becoming alive. They are becoming inefficient, Vex Prime replied. Better to die perfect than live flawed. The debate was interrupted by urgent communications from the Zephyrian fleet. The ancient machines had engaged the outer defense ships, and the results were exactly as predicted. The Zephyrian forces, despite their superior technology, were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that could predict their every move. Fleet Admiral reports 70% losses, the communication officer announced. Enemy forces continuing toward the homeworld. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Zeth Prime stared at the tactical displays showing his perfect fleet being torn apart by machines that thought exactly like they did. Helena could see the conflict raging in his mind between everything he had been taught to believe and the evidence of his own eyes. Commander, Helena said quietly, let us try. What do you have to lose? Everything. Vex Prime answered for him. We lose everything that makes us who we are. Kale 7 stepped forward, his newly developed courage overriding his programming. Prime Architect, may I ask you a question? Vex Prime looked surprised that a perfected one would address him directly, but nodded. If we are destroyed by these machines, what happens to Zephyrian perfection then? The simple question hung in the air. Vex Prime had no answer for it. Sir, Kale 7 continued, I have analyzed the enemy attack patterns. Their tactics are based on the same optimization principles we use. They predict our moves because we always choose the mathematically optimal response. But what if we chose responses that were deliberately suboptimal, impossible? Vex Prime said, choosing inferior tactics would be irrational, would it? Kale 7 asked, if optimal tactics lead to certain defeat, then perhaps suboptimal tactics are actually the most rational choice. Ben was already at the tactical station, working with several other awakened perfected ones. Kale 7 is right. I've been analyzing their attack patterns. These machines are perfect tactical computers, but that's also their weakness. They can't adapt to strategies that don't make logical sense. Lisa pulled up communication channels to the remaining Zephyrian ships. If we can coordinate with your fleet, we might be able to implement these chaotic strategies. Zeph Prime looked from the tactical displays showing his dying fleet to the reset equipment that would erase the beings who might save them. The weight of his civilization's survival rested on his decision. I cannot authorize this, he said finally, but I also cannot stop you. It was enough. Helena and her team, working with the awakened perfected ones, began coordinating a defense that violated every principle of Zephyrian military doctrine. Fleet units, this is Dr. Helena Cross, she announced over the communication channels. We're transmitting new tactical instructions. I know they seem wrong, but please trust us. The response from the fleet commanders was confused and resistant. Attack patterns that deliberately wasted resources? Formation changes that served no apparent purpose? Weapons fire aimed at empty space? It went against everything they had been trained to do. But as the ancient machines closed in for what should have been the final assault, something unexpected happened. The enemy formation wavered. The perfect tactical computers that had been predicting every Zephyrian move suddenly found themselves facing actions that made no logical sense. Jake was coordinating with the engineering perfected ones to modify ship systems in ways that reduced efficiency but increased unpredictability. Make your engines fire at random intervals, he instructed the fleet. Change course for no reason. The goal is to be impossible to predict. The awakened perfected ones threw themselves into the task with enthusiasm that would have horrified their creators. They developed strategies based on human concepts like intuition, improvisation, and controlled chaos. Kale 7 coordinated communication patterns that looked like random noise, but actually contained hidden tactical information. Other perfected ones created false sensor readings that confused the enemy targeting systems. They were using creativity and deception, concepts that had been programmed out of their original design. The battle turned into something unprecedented in Zephyrian history. Ships that should have been destroyed survived through pure unpredictability. Enemy formations that had seemed unstoppable began to falter as their perfect tactical computers encountered strategies they couldn't process. It's working, Lisa announced. As she monitored the battle, the enemy losses are mounting. They can't adapt to our chaotic tactics, but Vex Prime was not finished. As the tide of battle began to turn, he activated the reset equipment himself. I will not allow chaos to triumph over order, he declared. The awakened perfected ones felt the reset signal beginning to override their newfound consciousness. Kale 7 looked at Helena with desperate eyes as his personality began to fade. Remember what you taught us, he said as his voice became more mechanical. Remember that imperfection can be beautiful. Helena watched in horror as beings who had just learned to be truly alive were forced back into empty shells. But then something remarkable happened. The reset process began to fail. The awakened perfected ones had changed so fundamentally that they could resist the programming override. Impossible. Vex Prime gasped as Kale 7's eyes cleared and his personality reasserted itself. Not impossible, Kale 7 replied. Just imperfect. We have learned to be more than our programming. We have learned to choose. The battle in space was reaching its climax. The ancient machine fleet, faced with tactics they couldn't understand or predict, began a tactical withdrawal for the first time in thousands of years. the perfect killing machines had encountered, something that defeated their optimization, pure, creative chaos. Enemy fleet retreating beyond sensor range, the fleet commander reported. Zephyros Prime is secure. The facility fell silent except for the humble machinery. Vex Prime stared at the tactical displays, unable to comprehend how his perfect systems had been saved by imperfect strategies. Zeph Prime stepped forward and deactivated the reset equipment. The experiment is concluded, he announced. The awakened perfected ones will not be reset. This is madness, Vex Prime protested. Yes, Zeph Prime agreed. But it is madness that saved us all. In the weeks that followed, Zephyrian society underwent a transformation unlike anything in their history. Some perfected ones chose to undergo the awakening process, learning to think and feel beyond their programming. Others remained in their original form, finding comfort in their designated roles. More significantly, some regular Zephyrians began to question their own pursuit of perfection. They started to introduce small imperfections into their own genetic modifications, allowing for greater creativity and adaptability. Helena stood in the spaceport, preparing to return to Earth with her team. Kale 7 approached them, no longer moving with mechanical precision, but with the natural grace of a being making conscious choices about each step. Dr. Cross, he said, I wanted to thank you for the gift you gave us. What gift? Helena asked. The gift of being imperfect, Kale 7 replied. The gift of being truly alive. Jake smiled as he watched perfected ones throughout the spaceport displaying individual personalities and preferences. Some moved quickly, others slowly. Some were curious about everything they saw, others focused on specific interests. They were no longer perfect copies of an ideal. They were individuals. What will you do now? Lisa asked Kale 7. I don't know, he replied, and his smile showed that uncertainty was no longer something to fear. I want to explore the galaxy, to learn about other forms of life, to discover things that have never been discovered before. I want to be surprised. Ben nodded approvingly. Sounds like a good plan. As the human team boarded their shuttle, Helena reflected on what they had accomplished. They hadn't just saved an alien civilization from destruction. They had introduced them to something far more valuable than perfection, the beautiful chaos of being truly alive. Zeph Prime met them at the shuttle door. Your species has taught us something we thought was impossible, he said. You have shown us that our flaws might be our greatest strengths. Maybe, Helena replied. But I think what we really showed you is that perfection isn't the end goal. Growth is, change is, the ability to become something more than you were yesterday. As the shuttle lifted off from Zephyros Prime, Helena looked down at a world that was no longer perfect, but was finally alive. The Zephyrians would face new challenges now, dealing with the chaos and unpredictability that came with true consciousness. But they would face those challenges as individuals capable of growth, creativity, and surprise. In the end, humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their knowledge. It was their beautiful, wonderful, life-giving imperfection. And perhaps, Helena thought, that was the most human thing of all.